Hi, I'm Rachel from the Academic Skills Centre, and today we'll be looking at paraphrasing. First off, it's worth asking, what is paraphrasing? Very simply put, paraphrasing is taking someone else's idea and putting it into your own words. In many ways, it genuinely is just that simple. But if you're watching this video, you probably still have more questions about why we paraphrase, or about how to do it effectively. So let's keep going. The first thing to note is that when you paraphrase, you still need to cite your source. Sometimes students think that if they've changed the words, then they don't have to cite the source. Or sometimes they think that it's okay as long as the source is in their bibliography at the end of the essay. The thing is, this just isn't the case. Whenever you use an idea or a piece of information from another source, you still need to cite it, even if you put it into your own words. If you're using Harvard referencing, you can cite your source by putting the author and the year in brackets, or by using the author's name in your sentence. Either way is fine. Just make sure you do cite all of your paraphrases. So if paraphrasing means putting someone else's ideas into your own words, but you still need to cite the source, then the big question is, why do it? Why should we rewrite what someone else has already written perfectly well? To some of us, this could even seem disrespectful. How is it okay for a student to change the expert's words? The first reason we paraphrase is to avoid overquoting. If we had to use a direct quote every time we wanted to mention someone else's idea, we could easily end up with essays that were so full of someone else's words that there wasn't room enough for our own words. Often, when we paraphrase, we condense the idea somewhat, which leaves more space in our essay for our own ideas. Secondly, paraphrasing allows us to demonstrate our understanding. You've probably heard it said that the best way to show you understand something is to try to explain it to someone else. Paraphrasing is kind of like that. When you take someone else's complicated idea and explain it in your own words, that shows your tutor that you properly understand it. Finally, paraphrasing allows you to integrate someone else's ideas into your own argument. When you put someone else's ideas into your own words, you can write about them in a way that shows how it relates to the rest of your ideas. This may sound a tad abstract, but it should make more sense when we look at a few examples in a minute. I've just got one more note before we get to the example. As we've discussed, proper paraphrasing is putting someone else's ideas into your own words, but it is not simply rewording their sentences. Sometimes when students try to paraphrase, they just copy-paste their source text, then change a few of the words. This isn't effective paraphrasing. In fact, it can even be considered plagiarism, and it will show up on Turnitin. When you paraphrase, it's important to totally rewrite the whole passage, not just change a couple words while keeping the same sentence structure. Now that we've talked about why we should paraphrase and how you might go about it, let's look at an example to see how this works in practice. First, we've got our source text, which I've taken from a National Geographic article on penguins. Penguins employ physiological adaptations and cooperative behaviors in order to deal with an incredibly harsh environment where wind chills can reach -76 Fahrenheit. A bad paraphrase of this text might look something like this. Penguins use biological changes in order to deal with a very harsh environment. So, what's so bad about this paraphrase? As I'm sure you noticed, there are quite a few words that are exactly the same in the supposed paraphrase as in the original. The second half of the sentence, in order to deal with a very harsh environment, is almost exactly the same as the original, in order to deal with an incredibly harsh environment. The writer has just changed one word, incredibly, for very, which is very poor paraphrasing. What you might have noticed, though, is that the first half of the sentence is just as bad. The phrase, penguins use biological changes, in the paraphrase, is just an awkward rewording of the original, penguins employ physiological adaptations. The writer has just changed the original, word for word, rather than trying to rework it properly. But before we move on to the good example, I want to make one quick point. You may have noticed that the paraphrases doesn't include all the key information of the original. For instance, The paraphrase doesn't say anything about cooperative behaviors or the temperature of minus 76 degrees. That's totally okay. To write a good paraphrase, you don't have to include all the information from the original. Only include information that's important to your assignment. All right, it's time to look at an example of a good paraphrase. Penguins are social creatures. According to National Geographic, their ability to survive in extreme environments is linked to their cooperative behaviors. So what's so good about this paraphrase? I'm sure you can note all kinds of things, but I'll just list a few. Firstly, the writer makes clear that they're using another source. They refer to National Geographic, and they highlight the key information. Secondly, the writer uses the source to back up their argument. The writer first makes their own point, penguins are social creatures, and then uses the National Geographic article as evidence. Finally, the writer doesn't just copy any words or phrases straight from the original, except the very end, when they put cooperative behaviors in quotes. When you should usually avoid using direct quotes when you're paraphrasing, sometimes it's okay to take a key word or two, as long as you put it in quote marks. Okay, alright, now that we've seen an example of both a bad paraphrase and a good paraphrase, I hope everything we're talking about earlier in the video has become much clearer. So, what's next? If you're watching this video as part of a course, you should go do the accompanying activity. If you have any questions, or would like to learn more about paraphrasing, please do send us an email. And that's all from me for now. All my best, and good luck.